Weird Al's biopic is unleashed on the world. Wakanda Forever begins its screenings. Camp Crystal Lake is coming to a streaming service near you. And what do Indiana Jones and Doctor Who have in common? Well, stay tuned tonight and find out. That's right, 918ers, it's Thursday, and we are back. I'm your host and producer tonight, the Geek Boy. Joining me tonight is Mr. Narwhal, the commander of the 918 Northern Command Post, as we get ready to kick off a new episode of this fantastic week. I just about got tongue-tied before I got on. As you guys can tell, we're a little light on the crew tonight. The Reverend is traveling for the day job, and Goldar is, surprise, surprise, watching Wakanda Forever as we speak. So we're going to hopefully, I told him to text us his out-of-theater reaction when he gets done, so hopefully we'll still be on the air when he does that. We've got a couple folks in the chat. Jose Guerrero Jimenez is there, and Hernandez Charlie is watching. So glad to see these folks here. Want to welcome everybody who's here. Mr. Narwhal, how the hell are you?
I am doing pretty dang good. How about yourself, sir?
You know what? I'm here. We're doing good. We like we say, we didn't know exactly what kind of a crew we were going to have tonight, and we got a pretty full slate, so we might be able to actually get this done at a reasonable hour.
You know, we do have a action-packed show. We've got lots of stuff to cover. We have tons of great information, and of course, we have lots of stuff to shill as well. You know, lots of side projects we always have working on here.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? First of all, I want to thank everyone, all the folks who are tuning in tonight. And we do always ask that if you like and enjoy the show, please leave a like and share it around the social medias to help kind of, get us out there, because Facebook does like the likes and it does like the shares. Also, please leave your comments. Comment on anything that you want to talk about, whether you're watching it live or watching it time shifted. We will do our best to respond. Also, if you are so inclined, please jump over to our YouTube page and like and subscribe to it as well. We're trying to grow our presence on that platform to the point that we've actually considered maybe moving to YouTube exclusively for this broadcast starting next year. So kind of help us do that if you can. Finally, I want to remind everyone that Fanboys 918 has partnered with an OTT, that's an over-the-top service similar to Roku, called Audacity TV. They rolled out their app earlier this year, and for the foreseeable future, they'll be carrying our best segments of this program that Mr. Narwhal has graciously been putting together for us. He makes the trip to the secured Fanboys 918 archives that are in an abandoned salt mine and old nuclear test site where we keep all the old tapes of the show, and he's put those together for us. Now, in addition to this show's greatest hits, they're also carrying some of our other content, and you'll be able to watch us on your large screen instead of on your phone or tablet. Now, one of the great bits of programming that they're sharing for us, actually the person who's running for that runs that segment isn't here tonight. That's Goldar, and he runs Fanboys Nightcrawlers, and it's exactly what you might think from the name like that. He plays a video game in various segments and installments. Usually it's a horror themed game because of the Nightcrawlers theme and the time that he posts it, and each segment's anywhere from about 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes they go an hour, and he's done things like he's done The Last of Us Part 2. He's done what else is he? I know he's got some new.
He's done Flappy Birds. He's done Tetris. I think he's done. What was that one? Solitaire. He had a really sort of gripping episode where he just played solitaire for like 2 hours straight. It was awesome.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that is not what he's doing right now. But no, he's got a new segment that drops every weekend. In fact, I want to say that right now he's doing The Last of Us, the original game. If I remember,
it's the one on the PS4.
Yes,
because he doesn't have that PS5 money in yet. So
yeah, well, and
royalty checks from all that Audacity TV programming that we got going on.
Yeah, that's right. We're still waiting on those checks, but that's okay. That's all right. But he's not the only one running kind of a little side hustle for us. Why don't you talk about what you've got going for us there, Mr. Narwhal? I think you just dropped a new piece of it here just earlier today.
Earlier today, yeah. I've been kind of busy with the day job lately, and was able to actually take a few moments out of my busy pre-production schedule and get some interesting stuff up for fanboys finds. Considering that Mr. Goldar is currently sitting in a theater right this moment and actually enjoying the wonderfulness that is Black Panther 2, I thought that I would go back and share a little something that I have from the original Black Panther film. It's some of the costumes from the original film, courtesy of the Ruth E. Carter Afrofuturism in Costume Design exhibition, currently running at the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle.
Oh, so this is fairly recent stuff then.
This is fairly recent stuff. I took this on during my recent trip to Seattle. They have a rather large exhibition of a number of the costumes from Ruth E. Carter. If you don't know who Ruth Carter is, basically imagine any film that is that features and is extremely important to the African American experience in cinema. She probably did the costumes for it. She did everything from Selma to Black Panther to Shaft to Do the Right Thing.
Oh wow!
All of the different films that are just touchstones in Black film culture. She's probably the one who did the costume for it.
Wow, that is really amazing. That's awesome.
Just amazing.
Wow.
Whenever you're looking at these, especially these Black Panther costumes, a lot of times when you see movie costumes up close, from a distance they look great, but when you get in close to them, you can see the imperfections. You can see that it looks kind of rough. Not these. These look absolutely gorgeous up close. I mean, they are just beautiful, beautiful pieces of costume.
Oh, cool. That's always nice to. So these are all the hero costumes, then, for lack of a better term.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They had Killmonger's jean jacket costume, but that really wasn't one of the really cool ones that they had. But they had Baku, they had Shuri, they had Okoye, they had obviously T'Challa's Black Panther suit. They had Queen Ramonda's gown, which is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's just such wonderful work that Ruth Carter's done on this film.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that with us. And again, this is not the only place you can see it, folks. It is up on the page as we speak. It dropped earlier this afternoon. So if you get over there on the Facebook page and scroll down, you'll be able to see that video. And again, lastly, I guess before we move on to the actual show itself, by the way, Lori Vanpool is here. Thank you, Lori. It's good. Not only is it good to hear from you, it's she said it's good to see good to hear our voices. It's good to see that you're out there as well. Hopefully, I know there's a mean storm moving your way, so hopefully you can stay safe.
Yes.
So before we move on, there's a couple things we need to talk about. We need to talk about our Friday night block of programming. We're still going to have a dark night tomorrow night. We've got some footage for the Bond stuff that we shot. We're not quite ready to release it yet, but as soon as we do, we're going to roll that out. Hopefully next Friday we'll have that out there. That'll get us through November and December, and then Sci-Fi Friday we'll be back the 1st of January with, of course, the season 4 premiere of Babylon 5. So, I haven't seen the B5 babe in the chat yet, but I know she'll be happy to hear that. And lastly, people have wondered, how can you support Fanboys 918? Do you guys have a Patreon page? We don't, not for lack of trying. We're still kind of working on that, but we do have, I believe we have a swag store that's opened, and I'm going to go ahead and run the promo for that.
What is this place? What is it that you do here? Merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Come, walk this way, take a look. We put the name on everything. The t-shirt, the lunchbox, the breakfast cereal. Kids love this one. Merchandising, where the real money is made.
That's right, folks. Go to cafepress.com, fanboys_918, and you can find our swag store and buy whatever you want till your heart's is. You can buy tidy whities. It's okay. We got him. We got him. Not that I would
A little
suggest.
bit of everything.
Little bit of everything. Yeah, that's right.
Everything from hats to the stuff that goes underneath.
That's well, you know what I wear into my kilt, don't you? My shoes.
Tell us.
Um, so, anyway, enough of that. So let's all the feckless shilling out of the way. I've got not one but two bits of breaking news. So we're gonna check that out real. Yeah, we're gonna bring that up here real quick. That's right, folks. Breaking news here. You heard it first. Now, I'm really going to slot this first one as heavy rumor. Okay, I don't even know if Mr. Narwhal knows what I'm going to say, but it's heavily rumored because it's basically been put together from some tweets and a few other things. But there was a rumor going around that director Andy Muschietti, who everybody knows directed both It films, and he also has directed the Flash film that has hopefully we'll see a release one day. But the test screenings for that have reportedly been very well received. And of course, we talked last week about how James Gunn and Peter Safran have taken over the new DC Films division at Warner Brothers, and they've had a lot of meetings. And the rumor has it that Andy Muschietti is being eyed to air a Justice League Part 2. Yeah, this is kind of crazy. He recently directed, as we said, directed The Flash. And we know that James Gunn and Peter Safran, I guarantee you, they've already watched The Flash. I mean, they've seen it. They know what it is, and now, granted, it hasn't been released yet, and this is a film that has a star problem, as we all know. But then Jason Momoa, who's a big Andy Muschietti fan, has recently dropped a tweet saying, "Maestro, I'm great, so happy to get ready to do this great project and whatnot." So, but it's a mystery project that he can't talk about. So, a lot of people are thinking that Andy Muschietti may be going to direct Justice League Part 2. And granted, Justice League Part 1 did not perform theatrically well. It was a huge bomb. The Snyder Cut, while well received by the fans, really didn't make any money, even though it was a superior film. But you got to be thinking, with James Gunn and Peter Safran and David Zaslav, you've got to be thinking that they're like, man, we've got to do another Justice League movie at some point. Mr. Narwhal, what are your thoughts on this? You think this is a rumor or what?
So well, obviously it's a rumor, but there's a lot of play here. See, I heard a similar rumor, but it wasn't because you're right. Momoa recently posted that he's looking forward to working on a big project with James Gunn, and in fact, from the tweet from the bit I read, that he said that he is looking forward to basically appearing in one of his all-time favorite holy grail kind of projects, which leads me to wonder the biggest project that Jason Momoa has wanted to be in for years and years and years before he was cast as Aquaman. He wants to make a Lobo.
Oh, wow.
So the question is,
oh my God, he won't even need a lot of makeup. I mean,
that's exactly right. That's literally, we're talking, as much of a fan as The Rock is of Black Adam,
mm-hmm.
Jason Momoa is that big of a fan of Lobo. And
oh,
so
wow.
I wonder if they're going to pivot and maybe allow Jason Momoa to do double duty in the DCEU, especially considering that with Lobo you would be looking at makeup. You would look different, obviously, than Aquaman would. I could definitely see this being an option.
I never thought of that, but you're probably you could be right.
Well, it's even the possibility that he may play it motion capture, so that way they wouldn't even have to worry about makeup. They can just do it as a straight up CG character.
Okay. You know what? That's possible. Wow, I'm sorry you kind of took me off guard with that. Wow, okay. So, and there would be zero chance that Aquaman and Lobo would ever interact.
Well, yeah.
I mean, for the most
there
part.
was always, people always say, yeah, there's no chance that the Winter Soldier and Groot will ever interact. And
Yeah,
look where we're at now. I mean,
that's true. That's true. But yeah. Okay, well, I hadn't even thought of that. Well, but that would make just as much sense. So, I guess my question to you is, which one would you like to see more, the Lobo movie with Jason Momoa, or a potential Justice League Part 2?
you know, I as interesting as I think the Lobo film could be, I think it probably would behoove James Gunn and Peter Safran to come up with a way to sort of re-energize the Justice League property. We saw from the cameo that they had at the end of Peacemaker season 1 that he is willing to play with those characters, and he's willing to sort of push some of the bounds that we've seen previously with these characters, and I think that if he was able to infuse the Justice League with a little bit of the same, not only attitude, but also the same kind of pathos that you have from Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that could be a really, really interesting combination. Especially if, for example, they have the heavy hitters, right? But then you bring in some of the lesser known characters that we know that James Gunn obviously has an affinity for and affection for. I think that could make a really, really interesting combination.
I agree.
Just like what they did with the run of Justice League from the 80s, I believe, when it had, I want to say, Batman and I think maybe Aquaman were the only two major members, and then all of the others were people like Guy Gardner, Deadman, and some of the really weird characters. And you had sort of that really interesting dichotomy between the legacy characters and sort of the new guys on the block,
as opposed to the new kids on the block, which is something totally different from the 80s.
Totally different. Yeah. However, I would pay good money to see those guys fighting in a cage match against Milli Vanilli.
I wonder how Milli Vanilli feels watching all these sumbitches get rich and famous lip syncing on TikTok.
That's right. He's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. But that's a wholly different podcast. So we do digress. But I think either way, with James Gunn running the show, either way, it's going to be an interesting thing, no matter how it plays out, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so I think that would definitely be a very cool thing. So, a second here, I want to check on. So the other piece of interesting news that we have, that I guess dropped. Did it drop today? Was when we got the new trailer for John Wick 4, and that was a complete surprise. I had no idea that was coming, and man, of the three, John Wick 3 was kind of like, not my favorite, but it's still freaking amazing. And this looks like we are going in a whole new, this is no longer just a revenge film, right? We're bringing in Donnie Yen, and we've got all kinds of stuff they're expanding the world of John Wick. We got Lawrence Fishburne coming back, and you got John Wick and ninjas and Indiana Jones horseback stuff going on, and apparently, him and Ian McShane are on speaking terms again, and we've got all kinds of just crazy stuff.
Skarsgård, you got Hiroyuki Sanada.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's coming off Bullet Train, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, dude, and you got a cameo of the wife. The world has gotten so big in John Wick, and it feels, what's the word? It feels fantastical yet still real in so many ways. I didn't know this was coming. I mean, we all knew they were making a John Wick 4. I mean, my God, Keanu said he's going to make John Wick films till people quit going to see them. But, I mean, this is just going to be amazing, and the fact that much like the original Pirates of the Caribbean film and the original Mummy film, I expected not a whole lot out of this first film, and
Nobody did.
yeah,
Nobody did. This was literally a dark horse. The studio didn't expect anything out of it. Audiences clearly had no idea what they were getting
yeah,
into. The only people who knew that they were sitting on gold here were literally the filmmakers and Keanu Reeves.
right,
Those are the guys who knew sort of what they were doing when they were doing it. And I read a book sort of about the making of these films.
oh really,
And like halfway through it, they realized that they were like making something that was just going to blow everybody away. And it just, it has not only spawned a series of films, but now it's literally becoming its own mega franchise because they have obviously the John Wick franchise, but then they are in the process of filming a spin-off film called Ballerina,
right,
starring Anna de Armas,
mm-hmm.
And it's going to have cameos from all the regular John Wick players, including Keanu Reeves. And then they're also doing I believe it's going to be on Peacock. They are doing a spin-off prequel series called The Continental that is set during the 1970s that shows the early days of both Winston and Sharon, and it stars Mel Gibson.
Oh really?
Yes.
That I didn't realize Mel Gibson was going to be. That's going to be interesting as hell. I mean, I've been excited for that anyway. I mean,
oh yeah,
yeah. This
literally this is a becoming a massive franchise, and not only is it a massive franchise, really, there has not been a film that has created as significant of a impact in cinema, especially in action cinema,
yeah.
like this since the original Die Hard.
Oh, 100%. And now everybody's chasing that John Wick cheddar. I mean, yes, Deadpool was its own thing, but you look at everything like we talked about, Bullet Train for a second. A lot of these movies, Atomic Blonde, for example. I know there's another one out there. But those are the two that come to mind. Those two are really like hardcore. Like they would not exist were it not for John Wick.
Well, especially considering that Atomic Blonde was actually made by the guys who made John Wick.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, man, this and what I like is it's a new IP, relatively new IP that hasn't been rebooted or repurposed. It was its own thing that some guys made, and their goal was just to make a damn good movie. But they in their mind had the world built up enough. That's why I say it kind of reminds me of Pirates and the Mummy, in that those were just meant to be one-off films that hopefully made money, and it turns out they spawned an entire franchise, and the world they built was rich enough that they could go back and start mining that world for additional story material. And this is great.
See, the other thing that I really love about the John Wick ethos is that, to me, it is a direct counterpoint to the shaky cam style that was pioneered by the Jason Bourne movie.
Yes.
Because when you had your Jason Bourne movies, literally that was, characterized by super fast cuts,
right,
super shaky camera work, where you couldn't really see what was going on, but you just had this feeling of kinetic energy and action and movement, but you couldn't actually see what anybody was doing. You
right.
just got the impression that there was a lot of shit going on.
Right.
As opposed to now with John Wick, it is literally a ballet. It is a highly choreographed dance between Keanu Reeves and all of his assailants.
Mm-hmm.
And Keanu Reeves trains like a mofo in order to make these films work. He is proficient with all of those weapons. He trains for hours a day, pretty much 7 days a week to get as good as he is. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about these films, is that you can tell that there is actual skill, not just in the cinematography, but also in the actors, that they know what the hell they're doing.
Right, exactly. And I think that's another thing else that makes it work. I mean, it's just it's beyond compare. It really is, like you say, it's its own thing. It's a style of filmmaking that we had kind of lost, I guess, for a lack of a better term. Again, I thought the Bourne stuff was a little too much. As much as I like, quick cuts and everything, I like to be able to understand the geography of my action sequences. And so just like when I see car chases that I see that, and keep in mind, there's films that have car chases in them that do exactly what I'm going to criticize, that I enjoy. But like a lot of times, when you do a car chase, it's the energy is made in the editing. I mean, I guess you could argue that it all is, but the point being is that like when the geography of something doesn't make sense, then that's where you kind of lose me, and that's where the Bourne movie. I guess that's why the Bourne movies never really landed in like my top, 5 or 10 movies. I enjoy them; they're fine, but just the whole and that's one of the reasons what upsets me when I watch Quantum of Solace is because that movie was not shot to be edited like a Bourne film, and they butchered it in editing because you can tell they were chasing that Bourne cheddar, and that just irks me. So, all right, well, like I said, that's the breaking news segment. We have a rumor that Andy Muschietti may be directing Justice League 2, and we have potential for we have a great John Wick 4 trailer that is dropped, so we're going to hopefully hold on to those now. The next thing we've got, I'm going to go totally off script here because it looks like we're having a little internet issues here. Melissa Allen is watching. Hello, Melissa. I'm going to go off script here. I just watched, before we got on the air, Andor Episode 10. Oh my gosh, this is the best Star Wars show that no one is watching. And I don't know any other way to describe it because it's so good. This show is done for Star Wars. If they had dropped this right after The Mandalorian, Star Wars would be over the moon right now. But they chose not to do that. And they as I've said in our mid-season review, that Disney has finally let the adults back in the writers' room. So yeah, I'm really digging Andor, and it could be, dude. If it gets any better, it may leapfrog over The Mandalorian as being my favorite Star Wars property right now. So
here's my question to you. I've heard that the numbers on Disney Plus for Andor have not been as significant as other Disney Plus shows, such as The Mandalorian or even some of the Marvel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a couple of things. I think one, Andor is a slow burn. Okay, so it's not something you can easily drive. But the main thing, I think, is the whole "without respect, we reject" thing. I think that the fan base has been so burnt by these lackluster things like Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, that and just the inability for the way the fans have been treated and the way they've been looked down their nose at, and the way this property's been handled. I think that's 100% what this is about. I think they're just like, you know what, we're done. I mean, I guess the truth will tell when Mando season 3 drops, to see if that's what it is. But here's the thing, I wasn't interested in a series about Cassian Andor. I thought, well, that's kind of ridiculous. What are we doing that for? But it's really, really good. I mean, there is a monologue that Stellan Skarsgård gives in the last part of this episode that is amazing. I mean, and I can't believe I'm saying this about a Disney Star Wars program. It's that kind of writing that you win Oscars and Emmys for. It's really freaking good.
This is sort of their stab at doing a Star Wars prestige show, and maybe that's why this one really hasn't gotten the audience that a lot of the other Star Wars films has. Because let's face it, Star Wars still to this day sort of skews kid friendly and sort of skews more popcorn fare, and this is not popcorn fare. This is serious filmmaking. This is serious. To my point, prestige television.
Yes. Oh, it's nice. I'm glad you said that because it reminds me of an HBO show. 100%. It's like something. I mean, it's and when I say that, there's not a lot of TNA. There's not a lot of cursing. But I'm sitting there watching it tonight, and I'm watching Cassian Andor murder like 3 or 4 people. I'm like, on a Disney Plus show. I'm like, this is cool. This is awesome. I mean, awesome that I'm watching someone murder somebody, but you know what I mean. But the point being is like Star Wars is at its best when it takes itself not uber seriously, but seriously enough. Like this program could easily slot next to Rogue One or The Empire Strikes Back. And there's such a cognitive dissonance in the Star Wars universe, and we just accept it as fans. But like the way the Empire is portrayed in this show, it is exactly how you imagine the Empire would be after watching Episode 4. Right, like when Vader and Tarkin walk into the big conference room on the Death Star, and the admirals are all, arguing and vying for their own, and then, when Moff Tarkin leans over the table and says the regional governors will now have direct control over their territories, and the Emperor's disbanded the Senate, and I mean, it's a very sinister moment that never really gets a lot of traction, and I think that it's great that. This show kind of leaned into that. I think it's awesome. So anyway, check out Andor if you haven't been, folks. It's a slow burn, but it's well worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I haven't seen episode 10 yet, but I'm hoping to get some time to watch it tomorrow. I am looking forward to the rest of the run of this series, and especially very curious to see what they do with this in season 2.
Yes. So very, very good. And one of the other cool things about it is everybody in this show, there are no heroes on this show. People do heroic things, but everybody on this show is compromised in some way, shape, or form. And that's what's so freaking cool about it. It shows you the dark side of organizing a rebellion for freedom. They kind of make a play on something that was rumored that Winston Churchill did in World War II in tonight's episode. I won't go into detail on what it is. There's been no hard documentation. It's kind of a World War II, urban legend, if you will, about the city of Coventry. But if you know what the wives' tale is when you watch the episode, you'll 100% pick up on it. So it's pretty cool. So yeah.
One of the things too that I think is interesting about the show is, back when we were young, and for a lot of people even still today, the Empire or Darth Vader were like cool bad guys, right? It's like, I want to be just as Darth Vader kind of thing. And you think of like, the stormtroopers and especially people like the 501st, they're dressing up like the cool stormtroopers and stuff. And then you get this series where it's not as romanticized about the whole Empire thing, and you really start to see the real world implications of a massive empire like this, and how they would actually be presenting and the things that they would do. And you're sitting there going, oh crap, these are freaking space Nazis. I mean, it's horrible. Yeah. And it's really a definite tonal shift from to my point earlier, to the more kid-friendly Star Wars.
Oh, absolutely.
To the much more mature version that we're getting, not only in Rogue One, but now in Andor.
Yeah, and what do those two things have in common? Tony Gilroy. I mean, if we could get like a Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Tony Gilroy trifecta, and just tell Kathleen Kennedy, like, look, all you need to do is approve budgets. Just let these guys do their thing. You can't hire or fire anybody. Gina Carano, and just approve their budgets and go on from there. I think we would have a much better outcome with Star Wars as it is presently constituted. But yeah, and more to your point, like, and people have said this on the page when I posted some things earlier, like, you get to see the personal lives of people in the Empire. You get to see the personal lives of people in the rebellion, and it's like, this is really freaking cool. It's really and it's unfortunate that it's not resonating with more people, but that's okay.
I wonder though, once we actually do get to Emmy season, if this walks away with a whole bunch of awards, and if that's the case, I got a feeling that we're going to be seeing a lot more prestige television coming from Disney Plus.
I hope so. I really hope so, because they need it, because you can tell a difference by something that's shot in the vault and something that's not, and this is definitely not. So, yeah, so 100% on that. So again, sorry that was kind of a detour. That wasn't on the program tonight, but I just had to say something about it because I want to encourage folks that aren't watching Andor or may have given up on Andor, dive back in or pick it up. You will, in the long run, you will be eternally grateful. I told you to. Something that I guess you're eternally grateful about, though, and that only you can speak to tonight, is you recently viewed Weird, the
Oh yeah.
the biopic, and I say biopic in air quotes, of Weird Al Yankovic. Mr. Narwhal, you want to give your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so anytime you have Weird Al involved in a project, you know that it's going to be funny. It's going to definitely take a concept and turn it on its ear, and Weird is no exception. The story takes him from his early days with his parents, takes him through his early days as a musician, and shows his meteoric rise to fame. uh, the interesting thing about this is that it truly does hit a lot of the high points about the real story of Weird Al, right? It actually has a lot of the artists and the characters that were important to Weird Al. The thing is that it turns a lot of those kind of relationships and a lot of those expectations that you have completely on its ear, and really goes down some very very crazy avenues with this story. Now, if you've seen the Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, this is slightly different from that, in that Walk Hard is more of a parody of the entire idea of a biopic, and it really sort of plays into the conventions of the biopic, as it were. And Weird does that a little bit, but it is much more of a exploration of the character of Weird Al, and it really goes down some very bizarre paths, and especially highlighting some of the relationships in Weird Al's life. If you enjoy parody films, if you enjoy Weird Al, go and check this one out. It is currently streaming for free on the internet. Just go to roku.com and you can find it there. It's well worth your time.
That's yeah. I mean, like I said, I've seen the trailer, and it. I mean, it. It looks crazy, but again, it's like I don't know what else I would expect from Weird Al.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
so I gotta ask this: how's Daniel Radcliffe?
Daniel Radcliffe is actually very good in this. Trying to encapsulate the character of Weird Al. He he does enough that you can tell that he's playing Weird Al, but he puts a spin on it similar to like a Jim Morrison esque type of
Oh my
character.
God, that's crazy.
Uh, that is sort of much more edgy than the real life Weird Al. For example, Daniel Radcliffe in this has a chiseled six pack, and he's hard Harley, but it's also sort of in the vein of Weird Al, right? So it's like uh, uh, the sort of really avant-garde artists in this universe, they're playing polka.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are playing the accordion. They're the ones who are like the punk rockers. They're the ones who are the really a cutting edge kind of artists.
Right.
Uh, Basically, imagine what it would be like to have Weird Al in a universe where polka and that kind of parody artist is really sort of the cutting edge, the punk rock kind of person, and that's what you get with this movie.
My wife is very hit or miss on Weird Al, mostly miss. Uh, doesn't, but I told her, I said, you got to admit, and even she begrudgingly admitted, there is an element of genius to what he does.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he really does. So yeah, so I'm glad you liked it. It's a very now, and by the way, you laughed a lot, right?
Oh my God, I laughed like crazy during this film. There was because I'm a fan of cinema, and I know sort of the rhythm of how these films go, right?
Right.
And it's like you have the actor who starts from nothing, and he has his one first big hit, that he works hard to get, and he builds himself up from nothing, and then he reaches his success, and then something happens and it sort of causes him to fall, and then he has to struggle and get back up, and it hits a few of those notes,
Hmm.
but it takes a lot of, not even left turns, it takes a lot of barrel rolls and complete backflips in some cases, and you're sitting there at some point and going, how did we wind up in a drug lord's mansion in Colombia with a giant, gunfight?
Okay. Well, I'll be damned.
I have to say though that Mrs. Narwhal tried to watch it with me, and about a half hour in, she looked at me and said, "What the hell are we watching? I thought this was the biopic of Weird Al." And I told her, it's like you're talking about Weird Al, the parody king. He's not going to have a straight up
Yeah.
biopic of his life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, but here's the thing. I guess my question is: are enough people going to be in on the joke?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I do, because Weird Al is one of those guys who, even if you don't like his music, you know who Weird Al is, and sort of what he's about. And watching this film, there's no way that you can take this seriously. There's no way that you can watch this and even think that this is a 100% faithful and accurate
Right.
retelling of his
Yeah.
life. Especially, like I said, once you get to about that 30 to 45 minute mark in the film, you're going to be sitting there going, "Where did this come from?"
So tone
Um,
wise, you say would it slot next to UHF really well?
it actually would. It
Okay.
very much would, in the terms of, you know, it has a lot of that same feel to it in terms of the humor.
Hmm.
It has a lot of similar references to it. There's even a few sort of Easter eggs peppered
Oh,
in the
really?
film, harkening back to certain things from UHF.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take that as a strong recommend from Mr. Narwhal then. That Weird is definitely worth your time.
And it's
Um,
free. You
and
can't beat
yeah, and
that.
it's free. It's on
That
Roku, right?
sucks. Even if you're tearing your eyeballs out, you paid nothing to
Yeah.
go see this film.
Correct. You're 100% correct, sir. So, well, speaking of a movie that a lot of people are paying money to see, matter of fact, that's why Goldar's not here tonight. Wakanda Forever is starting its first public screenings tonight, and he's in one of them. And here's the thing: I'm looking at it on Rotten Tomatoes right now. It has an 85% critic rating, which I don't put a lot of faith in that stuff anymore. The critics, there's been such a divide between the critics and the audiences. But the audience score right now is 95%. So I'm going to be interested to see what that does. And the reason I bring a lot of this up, and the reason we're talking about this tonight, is that I saw an article, and I believe we posted it at Fanboys 918, that there was a story released earlier in the week that its ticket sales are tracking actually behind Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. We're talking pre-ticket sales. Behind Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, but ahead of Thor: Love and Thunder. Which makes me wonder if, since Marvel films initially are very front-loaded, and basically it's all the repeat business that you get. My question is, because it's tracking behind Doctor Strange and ahead of Thor, do you think it's ultimately going to finish behind both of those?
That's a great question, because for this weekend, the number one movie that has come out for this weekend for an opening number was 2013's The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. It opened with 158 million. This year's top number so far is 187 million for Doctor Strange 2.
Hmm.
That is the biggest opening weekend that we've had for any film. Now,
Now,
the
was that
first
is that U.S. or is that global?
that's US.
Okay, okay. I want to make sure. Okay.
Yep. So now the first film in the series, Black Panther 1, opened with 202 million domestic and finished just over 700 million domestic.
Yeah, but that was a
Um,
big cultural event.
it was a big
Yeah.
cultural event, and I think that's what we're going to see here. To your point, a lot of these Marvel films are front loaded. I have a feeling that this one's going to have legs,
If it's
just
good.
because if it's good,
Right.
and according to what we've been seeing from Rotten Tomatoes and some of the other outlets out there, they're saying that it's a great film. They're saying that it's powerful and touching. uh, here's my theory about Marvel cinema and about just cinema in general,
Hmm.
especially when you have multiple films in a series.
Right.
So let's say you have something like Avengers Endgame that is just an amazing film. It's massive success. So then, everyone loves that film. The next film that you have is going to be riding that wave, and
Right.
it's going to open high. But if it's, let's say, a Black Widow that is really not a good film and it underperforms, the audience's expectations are like, oh, well, that kind of sucked. And then the
Yeah.
next film after that will then basically be using that as their starting point to say, okay, yeah, that last one wasn't really good. Let's see how this one is. And a lot of times you'll see those numbers for that next film in the series go up or down depending on the impression that you had from the previous film. So when you look at it through that lens, the fact that we've had a number of disappointments from the MCU with Black Widow, Eternals, Thor, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange 2, films that, while each of them, yeah, they made money, but they weren't as beloved and they weren't as good as a lot of the other films that we've seen. You're going to be seeing that downward trend of people, not necessarily willing to pony up opening weekend because they're going, yeah, you know what, Thor: Love and Thunder just really sucked. I don't know that I'm going to go see this opening weekend. And then when people start to see it and they go, holy crap, this was such a great movie, then I think you're going to see those numbers build up and go longer. And that's why I think this film's going to have legs.
Okay. Well, that's fair. As I said, critic reviews have been pretty positive. Depending on how you sort it on Rotten Tomatoes, it's anywhere between like 84 and 73%, depending on which filter you use. Right. Some of the audience score right now is at 95%, but again, the first audiences are seeing it right now. The first general audiences. Some of the fan reviews I've seen have been more mixed.
Really?
Yeah, there some of them are not happy with it, and probably the biggest sort of I guess point that they've driven home is that the fans that I've seen it that don't care for it said that the MCU has made the world's biggest mistake by not recasting T'Challa. Or
Interesting.
and the one thing I did hear a spoiler of how they canonize T'Challa's death in the film, and
Uh-huh.
from what I heard, I do not like it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'll tell you what I thought they were going to do, especially to give the movie an emotional core and emotional weight. So this is not I don't know how you count something like this isn't a spoiler because it doesn't happen in the film. Okay, but again, if you were wanting this to happen, you're going to be like, oh, I thought there was going to be a huge, action set piece at the beginning with Black Panther, where he is killed by Namor.
Yeah, see, that's sort of what I thought too. I sort of thought that he was going to die in the giant flood that we see in
Yes,
all the trailers. I
right,
thought
and
he
and
was like, going to be killed during that event.
yes, and like he goes out in a very heroic way, like basically sacrificing himself for Wakanda, right? That's not what happens.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I heard what did happen. I'm like, really? That's what you did? I mean, so that's kind of off-putting. Um,
Yeah.
the movie does have a 2 hour and 40 minute runtime, which I don't know in today's modern multiplex. I don't know if that's a liability or not, because it used to be when you had 5 theaters and you had prints of film, that was a big deal. But now everything's digital. You can have 4 theaters showing this movie, and each screening starts 30 minutes after the next one. I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to be. What I do know is that the original Black Panther had a large built-in kid market. Kids. It skewed very kid friendly for a lot of reasons, and I don't know that families in particular are going to sit for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Well, or if you go into AMC, who's famously for showing 25 minutes of trailers, you're looking at over a 3 hour experience plus food plus everything. I don't know if that's going to hurt the movie or not. Again, if it's good, no one's going to care, right? If this is the best movie Marvel's done since Endgame, no one's going to care. But right now the 2 films in Phase 4 for me that have landed have been Shang-Chi and Spider-Man No Way Home, and technically that's only 50% of a Marvel movie. So if this can resonate half as good as both those films did, I think it'll be fine. But
see, here's what I wonder too. I wonder for a while if Black Panther 2 wasn't going to see a little bit of the Phantom Menace effect, where we sort of built up the expectation for this film, and been like, oh man, the Black Panther 1 was just a groundbreaking film, and it was so powerful and it was so wonderful. And then by the time that you actually get to see Black Panther 2, it's impossible for any film to live up to the standard, to that expectation that you've built up in your head. And when you're walking out of it, you're going, it was good. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't what I hoped it was going to be. And it doesn't matter that your hopes and your dreams were completely unrealistic, and they were never going to have, Howard the Duck take on the mantle of Black Panther. It's just not going to happen. So, it's just one of those things that I wonder if maybe we're going to see a little bit of that happening with Black Panther 2.
And that's 100% possible. And let's be real. Anytime you have a Black Panther movie that has 100% less Black Panther in it, you're starting behind the 8 ball. Okay, and we know that there was that was unavoidable. But I think the thing I'm hearing from people again, and I can't. It'll be really interesting to see what Goldar's thoughts are, but it's going to be interesting to see if the recast T'Challa camp's going to be proven right. If this thing opens, north of 170 million, it's going to be a win. They're going to call it a win, but if it pulls in 115, 120 million, and by the way, it's something any other movie would kill for, there's going to be some questions asked in the Disney boardroom on Monday morning.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And one of the questions I can't help asking is, why in the world are they going to bring a Indiana Jones show to Disney Plus? What the hell, man?
That would be money.
Well,
that would be.
It's only money if people watch it and like it, and. I'm singing the praises of Andor in one breath, but I've got the bad memories of Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and She-Hulk and WandaVision and most of what, some of what was Falcon and Winter Soldier and some of what was Moon Knight, and Hawkeye didn't even keep me interested enough to finish it. And I'm like, and let's not forget the non-classic Solo, So I just don't know. I don't know about this. So what do you think this is going to be? First of all, let me ask you that, because obviously we know Harrison Ford is not coming back to play Indiana Jones in a TV series. We've already done young Indiana Jones. So what do you think this is going to be?
So this was just recently floated by Disney Plus. They do not have a concept yet. They don't have a director yet. They don't have a showrunner for this yet. They have just said that Indiana Jones is a big IP. We need to exploit these IPs that we own. Therefore, we are going to create a Disney Plus Indiana Jones show. So the two ideas that I've heard, one is harkening back to a little bit of those young Indiana Jones shows, episodes that they did years ago, and doing a prequel series. There's a lot of fertile ground that you could have there, maybe sort of in the early days of Indiana Jones when he is older, let's say, than what you had in the young Indiana Jones kind of things. But maybe it's sort of when he's first out there doing his thing, and maybe it's that prequel series that we see Disney has done many times before.
Right.
The other idea that I've heard, which personally I think has a little bit more likelihood, is they are introducing a new character in the upcoming Indiana Jones film, played by Rachel Brosnahan, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or is it Phoebe Waller?
No, it's Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And you could not have turned me off on a movie more than to announce she's playing something in it. But yes, go ahead.
So the thing that I think is a bigger possibility is that this series will basically follow her exploits as the inheritor of the Indiana Jones franchise, as it were. So that way you have a little bit of opportunity to not only explore her new character in a more character-driven way, where you can dig into the backstory, maybe, because again, with the new Indiana Jones film, it's Indiana Jones film. It's not Phoebe Waller-Bridge film. She's just a side character. So I could definitely see them creating a Disney Plus show to focus on her, to really sort of introduce her to audiences. It would be at a lower price point, my guess is, than a big budget, full blast Indiana Jones-esque kind of film. They could stretch it out over a period of time to get more episodes out of it, therefore more subscribers. And if it sort of crashes and burns, the Disney Plus visibility isn't as big and in your face as if you had a giant film franchise that you drove into the ground,
Like Star Wars.
like Star Wars.
Well, but here's the thing though, and I firmly believe, going back to what we were talking about with Andor earlier, I firmly believe that the we talked about before how Last Jedi made less than The Force Awakens, okay, and Rise of Skywalker made way less than The Last Jedi. I mean, it made $1 billion, but they turned a $2 billion franchise into $1 billion franchise over the course of 3 films. And I firmly believe that solo bombing were the fans punishing them for The Last Jedi. I really think that people, forgetting the fact that the weakest part of the Solo film was the actor they cast to play Solo, but as you know, Solo to me as a film is not that bad. I'm not a big it's a gamer movie. If you've ever played a Star Wars role playing game, that's just what it is. But again, I think is it Alden Ehrenreich? Is that his name? I think he's woefully in over his head trying to carry Harrison Ford's water. But that all being said, it's not a bad film, and I really think that the fandom was punishing them for this. If they do some shenanigans in Indy 5 and quote unquote replace Indiana Jones with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, yet another Disney princess, it's funny. Disney bought Marrvel and Lucasfilm because they had the princess market cornered. Like, we need to corner the little boys market. And what have they done with both of those properties since they got them? Is they turned them into Disney princess pieces. But I don't know, man. If Indy 5 does not land like it should, like it needs to, I don't know, man. I just think the fans are gonna. We can't revolt anymore. It was like, unless you cancel your Disney Plus subscription, and I don't even pay for mine. So there you go.
Here's the thing, right?
Okay.
Part of me is like, yeah, I would love to see another great Indiana Jones film.
Oh yeah.
Another part of me is another big part of me is like, you know what? If this sort of crashes and burns, maybe it's a good thing, because maybe, just maybe, it might force studios to say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't try to, completely rehash every single franchise that we've had, and maybe, just maybe, we should come up with some fresh new ideas.
Yeah, like John Wick.
Like John Wick.
Yep. So,
Or the other thing that they could do is they could go overseas and buy TV shows from Europe or other parts of the world.
yeah. Oh man, I mean, how long has a Robotech movie been in development?
Oh, a long time.
I think it was announced in 1977. I think they were right after that they announced that George Lucas was directing that Rogue One prequel or sequel.
I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it's good. I do have a lot of faith in that one. But and I'm looking at how I've got these slides labeled, and I have Indiana Jones and the next one, which is the next property that's going to show up on Disney Plus, and that is Doctor Who. We got an announcement. Yeah, and we posted this story like Doctor Who is coming to Disney Plus. I'm kind of scratching my head on this, other than this is a scam on the part of the BBC to get money flowing back through this franchise, because it is in such dire straits over across the pond, and it's in such bad shape. Go ahead.
So the thing about Doctor Who, right? Doctor Who is one of those shows in the UK and with the BBC that it has people who love it and it has people who really could care less about it. And those numbers sort of fluctuate up and down depending on how the show has been doing, right? And especially considering how the most recent series of Doctor Who has been going with Chris, the franchise killer Chibnall, and Jodie Whittaker. Doctor Who has not been this low in not only the ratings but in its cachet for a long time.
Probably since the Colin Baker years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? Doctor Who is not a cheap show to produce. It's one of those shows that has a lot of CG. The people who are working on it, they make a lot of money. For each of these episodes of Doctor Who, the budget will fluctuate up and down, but the average budget for a Doctor Who episode, do you know how much it is? Take a guess.
Of course, we are talking. I'm gonna say in dollars.
Yes.
Maybe 3 to 5 million.
2.25 million.
Really?
That is the average cost for a episode of Doctor Who.
Really? I mean, that's still not cheap. So I was right when I said about the three.
Not cheap at all.
No, but I was still right when I said about the 3 million range. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
With obviously
Thing, right?
with some episodes costing more than others, obviously.
Of course. But see, here's the thing, right? The BBC doesn't have the same amount of money coming in as a Paramount or an ABC or any other American network. The BBC is taxpayer funded. They don't do advertising. They don't get their money that way. They get their money straight from the government. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in their budgets.
Right.
And
you know where the government gets its money from, right?
Where?
People like you and me. But anyway, don't get me started on that. That's a whole different podcast. But Great Britain's government doesn't get it from me.
That's right.
Sticking it to the king.
That's right. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
So they are very excited about this in terms of, actually the BBC is excited about this, and that they don't have to foot the bill for Doctor Who anymore, or at least
Right.
and nowhere near as much, because they're getting that Disney cheddar. Um, but they're still going to be able to have one of their marquee top level shows that gets a lot of views, and it's sort of an institution over there,
Oh, it
right?
is. Yeah. Now, my question is, are they going to pull over classic Doctor Who onto Disney Plus? Because if you look at, like, I have BritBox on Amazon Prime, so I can watch things like Doctor Who and Space 1999 and UFO and things like that. And one of the things that really kind of shocks me is they treat classic Doctor Who, or they treat the two versions of Doctor Who like almost completely separate IP. Like, they have Doctor Who. If you pull up Doctor Who, you start with Christopher Eccleston and move forward. If you want to watch Tom Baker or John Pertwee or Peter Davidson or even William Hartnell, you have to go look up classic Doctor Who. And I've always found that weird. And I mean, like you said, it's a BBC property, so I don't know why they have them situated like it. So, Mike, do you think they're going to pull over both pieces of IP, or just the new ones?
They are only pulling over the new IP ones,
Okay.
the classic Doctor Who. To your point, yeah, it is essentially considered to be two separate franchises. The classic stuff is going to stay on BritBox here in the
Okay.
States, and then the new Doctor Who going forward will be available exclusively on Disney Plus. That means you will no longer be able to tune into the BBC and to the BBC America and watch it on TV. You
Oh,
have to
wow.
go and see it on Disney Plus in every place that has Disney Plus, except for the UK.
Dude, that is insane. I wonder how
Yeah,
Disney must have paid them a ton of money.
a ton of money. Not only that, they are actually funding the series. So like I said, the current episode budget is 2.25 million.
Hmm.
They've actually released what the average budget is going to be for the new episodes going forward.
Uh-huh.
11.5 million.
Oh my God. That's like a what, a 50, a 5 times increase?
Fivefold increase per episode. So
If
really
they could if they could
days
funnel some of that money to the writers' room, that'd be great.
oh, you naive child.
I know. I know.
That's all going to Russell T Davies pocketbook. And how however, I have also heard that just like with all of their other big IPs, Disney wants to expand out the Doctor Who universe, and that means that they are actively looking to develop spin-offs
You
on
know,
Torchwood or
I remember something called Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures, that they had all that.
they did, but but it's one of those things that the BBC didn't have the money to keep those shows going the way that they needed to go. Well, now the mouse is ponying up the cheese for them, and you're
Wow.
hopefully going to start seeing a lot more shows. Now here's the rub, right?
Okay.
Rumor has it that along with the money, Disney has a bit of creative control here as well.
Oh my God. That's the last thing we need to have happen to this show. I mean, I don't know. It can't get any freaking worse than it is now. I mean, it's like, my thing is, the good thing the good thing for the BBC is Disney rewards failure. So if the show sucks again, they're not going to take their money away. Good God. Oh my God.
And while Disney doesn't have like complete control, they will have some limited input is what I'm hearing, which is
I see.
basically the code word for we'll give you the money, but don't do anything that we don't like.
Yeah. You get in bed with the Don, you got to start going on hits for him every now and then. Wow. Okay. So it was kind of interesting because I have both these slides labeled Doctor Who D plus and Indiana Jones D plus, and like all I can think of is the American report card system right now. D plus. But so, speaking of expanding universes out, I'm gonna have to kind of defer to you on this because you may know more about it than me. It was announced, and I don't know how you feel about this, that Paramount is developing a Friday the 13th prequel series called Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
What do you now? The
Yeah.
the one. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, please, please.
Well, the only interesting thing I read, and kind of interesting is that this is the jumping off point from Doctor Who, is because I heard that the way they structured the deal, they had their hands on all the Jason IP. So they have everything from the original Friday 13th to Jason Goes to Space. I mean, I doubt they got their hands on Freddy versus Jason, but no one really expected that. But so I did find that was very interesting that they made a point to mention that in the article. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, originally, what had happened was the reason that you haven't seen any new Friday the 13th anything for so many years is because the rights to this IP has been tied up in all sorts of ugly litigation.
Oh, really?
So you have the people. Oh yeah, the people who made the original Friday the 13th, the original one, have been fighting against the people like Sean Cunningham, who made basically Friday the 13th 2 on through the rest of the films. And so the people who own the original one, which is people like Victor Miller and Mark Toberoff, they have owned that original story in the original ideas with those characters. And then you have sort of the films that have come after that. From the films that have come after that, those groups have also split into two separate camps, where you have Sean Cunningham, who owns certain elements of the Jason mythos, and you have another group, which I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but
Right.
they own other parts. In fact, I don't know if you actually noticed or not, because a lot of people haven't. Um, at some point, they stopped calling the Friday the 13th films Friday the 13th.
Right.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice it, but now that you say that, yeah, I mean, like they became things like Jason Goes to Hell or Jason X or those
Exactly.
kinds of things. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's because the people who own a part of that IP, Sean Cunningham, they own the character of Jason, but they don't necessarily own the title Friday the
Oh
13th, and they
wow.
don't own certain things like Crystal Lake and whatnot. And so that's why you basically had Jason going to Manhattan and space and Baskin Robbins and just doing all sorts of crazy things,
Yeah.
because they literally couldn't go back to Crystal Lake, or at least not in any real way that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they have finally, after all of these years, settled all the lawsuits, and all the people who own the various disparate rights to these parts of the Jason IP, to the Friday the 13th IP,
Mm-hmm.
have now all come together under this new banner and are creating essentially they're calling it a prequel slash reimagining of the Jason Friday the 13th mythos. It's Brian Fuller is the person who is sort of heading this up, who has made all sorts of great
Oh my
shows
gosh,
over
dude,
the
that's
years.
right. That's the other thing I remember in the article. I'm glad you brought. He is, yes, he's the guy that created Hannibal, which is an amazing show, by the way.
Pushing
Um,
Daisies,
what? Oh yes, yeah,
Pushing Daisies, a major hit, and also A24 is involved in this as well, which they have a massive pedigree in terms of horror filmmaking
right.
at this point. I find it interesting that they're doing this as a series though, and that's sort of where I'm scratching my head a little bit, because to my point earlier, yeah, there is a lesser expectation, I guess, for a streaming series,
Right.
but but here's what I wonder: like every episode, it's going to be Billy and Tammy and Susie and Paul, and they're hanging out there at Crystal Lake, and at the end of each episode, somebody gets killed with a weed whacker. Is that what they're going to be doing for this thing? Are we starting off with Pamela Voorhees and doing the Bates Motel version of Friday the 13th? How quickly are we getting to the machete wielding, hockey mask wearing Jason? Because I mean, obviously, that's sort of the appeal of this
Right.
franchise, is the fact that you have this.
As someone who watched Hannibal and really freaking enjoyed it and was so jazzed at what and to this day I am bitter. Two things. I mean, I'm bitter about a lot of things, but let's pick two of them for now. I'm bitter that I don't have any hair, but I'm bitter that we never got a Hannibal season 4, I think. And I'm bitter of the majesty that could have been Brian Fuller's version of Star Trek Discovery, because he created Discovery and was subsequently dismissed when Alex Kurtzman sunk his claws into it. So both of those things having been said, and mentioned the other things that you've talked about that he was behind, I believe he was behind American Gods as well. I cannot wait to see what he's going to do. And to answer your question, what's it going to be? All the things that you just said is what it's going to be. I'll never forget watching Hannibal going, okay, when's he going to eat somebody? Is this a week? But you didn't care because the other stuff they were doing was so damn compelling that, like, wow, by the time he did eat somebody, I was like, okay, cool, he ate somebody, but that other stuff was cool too, man. Like, he did such really cool stuff with Hannibal, and of course, it didn't hurt the fact that he had Mads Mikkelsen playing Hannibal, And again, in kind of one of those to kind of go along with this conversation, the only thing that really hurt that show was they did not have the rights to any of the Silence of the Lambs IP. So they couldn't use Clarice Starling. They couldn't use any. I mean, they could use. The reason they got away with using not Buffalo Bill, the killer from Red Dragon. I'm sorry. I'm Buffalo Bill was the killer in Silence of the Lambs. Sorry, but the reason they got away with using some of these other things is because they appeared in other books and they had the rights to all those other books, but not that. So I think Clarice Starling and Buffalo Bill were the only two things that were 100% off limits to them. But yeah, man.
And the crazy thing, then they had the show that aired, I want to say it was on CBS for a season or so, that actually was the Clarice Starling show.
Yeah.
And they made it about everything Clarice Starling except for Hannibal Lecter.
I know.
They couldn't touch any of the Hannibal Lecter stuff. So they had to go down the Buffalo Bill sort of wormhole to make him their sort of big bad kind of thing. And people were like, But where's Hannibal Lecter?
That show was such a creative misfire. I mean, that thing was it was ridiculous. The worst thing CBS ever did was let it go longer than the worst thing they did was greenlighting it to series. That's the worst thing. I mean, one thing to get a bad pilot, but to actually dump this on the world, I don't know. But no, because of Brian Fuller is involved, I am so intrigued. I mean, I just. This thing that I would normally is this like a CW show? No, it's Brian Fuller. I'm like, okay, so I am impressed. By the way, have you seen has the True Lies series started yet?
It has not started yet.
Okay,
no, I haven't even seen a trailer for it.
I have seen a trailer and it looks fun. Imagine did you ever watch a show called Covert Affairs? It looks like it's kind of in that vein. So it looks like it could like a Covert Affairs meets Scarecrow and Mrs. King type thing. That's a deep cut for a lot of folks, which is basically True Lies on a budget, which may or may not work, but there's a lot of things in the trailer that look interesting. Now we'll see how it all plays out, but it does look entertaining to me. because we're
it seems like we're really looking back towards the 90s specifically for a lot of our remakes these days, and sort of reimagining and rebooting,
yeah,
not so much series at this point, but taking the movies and then trying to expand those out into
right,
a series prospect. And my question is, I don't remember a lot of the shows back then having a lot of depth and having a lot of nuance. And I wonder if, some of these shows that they're coming up with and some of these, things that they're pitching, I wonder if it's going to scratch that same itch that we had back then, right? Like with the Friday the 13th thing.
hmm,
You'll watch Friday the 13th for the kills. You watch it to
right,
see how Jason's going to kill the camp counselor this time.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't know that, for at least for a lot of us, I don't know that we're looking for a nuanced exploration of why Jason became the way that he did. Just like we saw when they tried to do that with Halloween,
right,
right? When we started going down that rabbit hole of why is Michael Myers the way Michael Myers is? Because he's freaking Michael Myers. We
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need to have the explanation. We just need him to start stabbing kids. I
yeah.
mean,
Well, and some of it too, I think, depends on who's doing it. I.e., Brian Fuller, someone with some vision, who's definitely basically an auteur for television. And it also depends on the material itself. Like, there was enough material on Hannibal Lecter to mine that. Hannibal as a series was going to work if you had someone who understood how to put it all together. Did they take liberties with the material? Yes, but they did it in a way that still did not tarnish the original, right? Something like, I don't know, with Brian Fuller doing that, I'll say, is True Lies a TV series? I don't know. I mean, and like you said, do we really want to explore that? Let's take the recent fan debacle or fan outcry against Halloween Ends. Okay, I have not seen it, but as I've joked, I've read the plot online and couldn't believe that they decided to go with it. Let's look at what I call we have basically two trilogies now. If you use the original Halloween as the kickoff point, or two sagas, we've got Halloween, Halloween 2, and H2O. Okay, and you've got Halloween, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends. I would make the case that despite all the cheese involved, Halloween, Halloween 2, and H2O are the more satisfying trilogy. Because, like you said, they Halloween 2 doesn't take a lot of chances, Halloween H2O doesn't take a lot of chances, but it gives you exactly what you're it gives you what you want. It gives you Laurie Strode taking on Michael Myers with a freaking fireman's axe, and they have their big final showdown. I think you could argue, much like with The Last Jedi, that Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends are gutsier movies, for lack of a better term. They take more risk and they take the story in it, but they didn't do it in a way that the audiences wanted. They don't want to see this. They want to see, like you said, Jason killing co-eds. They want to see Michael Myers stabbing kids. Do we want to learn why Freddy became Freddy? Not really. So I think it depends on the material itself. We just finished our 4-week run of Night Stalker episodes, and the last week I did a traditional Night Stalker episode, and then I screened the pilot for the 2005 reboot, which only lasted, I think, 6 episodes. And honestly, I think that's a good show. It's not the Night Stalker. I mean, and that's your thing too. Like when I think there's a lot of these things that like they pitch a concept that doesn't have any recognizable IP behind it, but it's just similar enough. Like, hey, let's call this True Lies. We own that, don't we? I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, do you think there's some of that going on? Because sometimes I wonder if that's what they're doing. Like, they pitch something that's like, I don't know if I want to do that, but hey, what if you add another character and we call it this? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's been happening for years and years. I think back to, for example, Die Hard 2, right? Where, you had a completely unrelated IP, you had a script that was out there, and they said, yeah, you know what? Let's just slap John McClane in this and turn it into a Die Hard movie. And
Yep.
it worked. I mean, it was a pretty
Yeah.
decent movie.
58 minutes.
It was
That was the
better
name of
than,
that was the name of the book, was 58 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But it's not always that easy, right? It's not always, as simple as just slapping a brand on it and saying that it's Star Wars or it's
Right.
Star Trek. It has to be true to the original material, and it has to have something in it that is going to not only resonate with the people who watch the first one or watch the original one or what have you, but it's also going to need to be something that adds something to what was seen before. We don't need to have just a complete rehash, but you can't add too much, because once you start doing that, then you're starting to get into, like, completely new territory where it has less and less relationship in relation to the original IP, and that's a really hard road to go down, to thread that needle, as it were.
And that's why I'm lobbying for the guys that do Cobra Kai to do a master class, because they've threaded that needle. Whether you're a Karate Kid fan or not, people that like the Karate Kid love Cobra Kai. They have figured out how to do it, and they've not only kept the fan base of the original Karate Kid IP, they've built new fans on top of it, and they're about the only. I was going to say, Cobra Kai, Creed, which, unless you don't ask Sylvester Stallone, the Cobra Kai, the Creed films, the new Jumanji films, and Ghostbusters Afterlife are the only ones I've seen that have really successfully threaded that needle. And it's like a combination of being in love with the original IP but not slavish to it, but yet having an understanding of what the fans, what the appeal is of that IP. Like, hey, you know what? If we make Luke a broken down old man, fans aren't going to like that. And there comes a matter of seeing what will still of what you can do to stretch it. Not like for me, and again, I realize I'm in the minority on this because a lot of people love it. I didn't like Ron Moore's reimagining of Battlestar Galactica. It was just too much different for me. I've always joked if they called it anything but Battlestar Galactica, I probably would have liked it. But
here's the thing, though, right? For battle, not Battlestar Galactica, for Ghostbusters Afterlife. See, in my head, that one doesn't work quite as well for that example, because to me, Ghostbusters Afterlife was a bit too much in the fan service category, and
Okay.
leaned too hard on, hey, here's this thing that you remember from the previous one. Hey, there's this cameo from over here, and it didn't really
Right.
bring anything new to it, and especially considering that the new characters that you sort of have in the story and in the film, A, you don't really care about them, and B, at the end of the film, you don't really get any kind of resolution on those characters. Literally, as soon as you get the cameos from the original Ghostbusters, you couldn't care less about
Yeah.
what happens to them.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's why this is such a subjective thing, because see, I fully agree with you that Ghostbusters Afterlife is full of fan service, right? I don't care. Like but yet there's other times like it's too much. I'm right in your camp on what you're saying. So it's such a hard thing to do.
totally subjective.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
so
totally.
subjective, because I don't think fan service in and of itself is a bad thing. I think it depends on how it's used. Like if you got, let's say, modern Star Trek, which is for the most part telling really terrible stories, but they're throwing all these Star Trek Easter eggs in there. That's pandering. That's fan service. But if you're telling good, compelling stories that work the lore into it, that's not fan service. That's world building. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those
And
things.
it's sort of like the difference that you get between, let's say, a Picard or a Discovery, and what you're seeing in Strange New Worlds. In
Right.
that, I would posit that Strange New Worlds is a much superior series to the other two shows that I mentioned, because while there is some fan service in there, it is taking characters and stories and showing them sort of in a new way, but it's much more faithful to the original intent of the series
Right.
and the original focus of the series than you have with something like a Picard or Discovery. And
Correct.
to your point about the fan service, I'm a huge fan of Lower Decks, and that is pretty much nothing but fan
Yeah,
service.
it is. It is. But again, it's because it's animated and because of how it can get away with a little. It's like I give Lower Decks, even though I'm not in love with Lower Decks. Jessica just loves it. I mean, she can't get enough of it. I know you like it a lot. And a lot of people do. I don't dislike it, but I'm not as in love with it as a lot of people are. Prodigy's fine. I don't, again, kind of like Lower Decks, I don't dislike it. I think Star Trek works best when it's about humanity, and there's just nothing. There's no human characters on there, So I think Star Trek has always worked best when it is holding a mirror up to humanity, and so in that way, it's Prodigy's doesn't really do that for me. There's more to like in Strange New Worlds than any of the other live action shows, I think. Although I've heard good things about season 3 of Picard, so we'll have to see. And they're, someday when they make episode 10, they're going to make episode 10 and Star Trek 4 are going to come out at the same time, So, but speaking of something that's coming out, we've kind of beat this to death. You posted an article, and I think, because it's funny because we just talked about this last week, right? Like this was like one of our. We almost played it for comedy, but Jimmy C is actually out there publicly kind of downplaying expectations for Avatar 2. You want to talk about this for a minute? I think it's kind of interesting because we said don't bet against Jimmy C. Well, hell, he's hedging his bets on himself at this point.
That's right. It's one of those things that even a cinematic god, dare I even say Avatar, like James Cameron, on occasion has moments of vulnerability and doubt, because he is deep into production on Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5 currently.
Oh, is there going to be 5 of them? I thought there was just going to be 4.
There are going to be 5 of these things if he has his way, and it's going to be like this giant multi-generational saga kind of thing. But he has publicly said to Total Film magazine, in fact, that he fully understands that the cinematic landscape has changed, and it's not the same world that he released the original Avatar into. And he says, the Avatar 2 could come out and it could underperform, and if it does, what we may need to do is we may need to revisit Avatar 3, and maybe Avatar 3 sort of wraps up our entire story that I'd like to tell in this. And if Avatar 2 blows the roof off of things, then I can sort of take my time and talk about Avatar 4 and Avatar 5 and what have you. But it's sort of interesting to see him sort of acknowledge the fact that I may not be the greatest filmmaker that's ever lived, and this may not work, but let's roll the dice and see where this goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're going to get Avatar 3 no matter what. It's kind of like Matrix 3. Like,
Absolutely.
Once they realized they had a limit on their hands with Matrix Reloaded, they're like, well, we've already, like kind of like this. We're already we're too deep into production on Matrix 3 to stop this train, so we'll just cut it off here. But
Well, and especially considering that he's essentially funding these things himself, more or less.
Really?
The guy's made more money than God at this point.
Yeah.
And while he does have some studio funding, he's footing a significant portion of the bill himself.
Wow.
Because he's developing all sorts of new film technology and stuff, and that way he can take his time and make it the way that he wants to make it,
Man.
and he doesn't necessarily have to answer to a studio because he's James freaking Cameron.
Yeah.
And he can do whatever he wants.
I mean, well, and he learned from George Lucas, who George Lucas did the exact thing that everyone tells you not to do. Never sink your own money into something. Always get investors and what. No, he sunk his own money, but he reaped the rewards of it. It's his. Same thing. Cameron's doing the same thing. And I would honestly say that the three people that have done the most for cinema technology-wise are probably Douglas Trumbull, James Cameron, and George Lucas, as far as developing new technologies and really pushing the art of movie making, like pushing it right out there to the edge of that envelope, saying, okay, what else can we do? And again, I'm not I've talked many times. We talked just last week about how I don't think this movie's going to hit like the first one did, but I think it's going to make money. I mean, I think it's going to be successful. Goldar's actually rooting against it. That's okay. So
Honestly, I'm not really that excited to see this.
I'm not either.
I see it probably, but
yeah,
I'm definitely not going to be there opening day for this.
Oh God, no. I don't know anybody who is. That's the other thing. I mean, it's just one of those weird sort of things. I don't know anybody in my circle who can't wait to who is so excited for this movie they're going to be their opening weekend. I just don't.
Exactly. So, yeah, and there's a quote from James Cameron in this article that basically says, "We're in a different world now than we were when I wrote this stuff. It's the 1-2 punch, the pandemic and streaming, or conversely, maybe we'll remind people what going to the theater is all about. This film definitely does that. The question is, and this is his direct quote, how many people give a shit now?"
Yeah. He's exactly right. And I mean, here's the thing. If it's a crowd pleaser, if it works, a la Spider-Man No Way Home, I think it'll make cheddar. I think it'll make enough to justify the other, at least the third film. Chris Gore did a great. He was reviewing Black Panther 2, and he was not a fan of it. And he made a comment that I thought was very telling, which is to have a franchise, you need 2 really good, successful films. Like you had, Star Wars and the Empire. Once you had Star Wars and the Empire Strikes Back, then we're going to see Star Wars forever. Once we had Terminator and Terminator 2, we were going to see Terminator films forever. Same thing with Alien and Aliens, and Pirates of the Caribbean and all these things that have become franchises. It's actually the second film that locks you into a successful franchise. And this will be that second film. And again, he was very honest. He goes, you can argue the merits of the films that came after those two, and all these franchises. But Avatar 2 will be the one that decides if this thing's a viable franchise or not, or was. I mean, and I hate to call it a flash in the pan because my God, it's the highest grossing film of all time. But again, like to quote Cameron, who gives a shit anymore? I just don't necessarily know that I do. So.
And then here's the thing too, right? Because you have somebody like James Cameron who, to say that he has a track record is massively understating
Yes.
the obvious here.
Yeah.
He makes Titanic, which was by far the most successful movie ever made. He takes a decade or so off and comes back and says, I think I'll make another movie. It makes Avatar, which, again, is the most successful movie ever made. He takes another decade and a half off at this point and says, I'm making another movie. What happens when this one doesn't necessarily complete the trifecta on that?
I know.
Even if it does make, let's say, $900 million at the box office, which is absolutely nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
but just the fact that it doesn't measure up to his last two films,
Yeah.
What's that going to do, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to sort of tarnish his mystique? Is it going to tarnish his reputation, or is he going to be able to rationalize it and spin it in such a way that it still makes him look good?
Well, and the rub's going to be too if it underperforms. I mean, let's just assume it's going to underperform in relation to the first Avatar. Okay, I mean that's fair, right? I mean, it could make $1.5 billion and still underperform in relation to the first Avatar. But how do you square that circle if it is arguably a better film? You know what I mean? Like how do you deal with that? If Way of the Water actually ends up being a better film than the first Avatar, but it doesn't perform as well, what do you do then? I mean, I guess you could argue that that's what happened with Empire Strikes Back, but it made so much money, But yeah,
I would say that probably the last film for me that did that was the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider series. The
yes,
first film was not that great of a film. The
nope.
second film was much
superior. It was a very superior film. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it just didn't click like the previous one had.
Mm-hmm. I'll never understand that because I saw that second film. First film was a lot of eye candy, and I saw that second film and like, wow, this is great. And then now they've got it, and it, like you said, it did not do well at all, or not anywhere near as well as the first one. Yeah, but it's almost kind of the trifecta of Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. Like Off the Wall sold really well. Thriller's the greatest selling album of all time. Bad sold something like 20 million copies. But compared to Thriller, it sold horribly. It's like, and Michael Jackson spent the rest of his career chasing that. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, we've gotten kind of off track and all over the place tonight, but that's pretty much everything we got on the menu tonight, folks. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in. I want to thank Mr. Narwhal for being here and helping me discuss all this stuff. We've had folks from all around the interwebs tuning in. I want to remind everyone that we do not have an episode of Sci-Fi Friday tomorrow, but we do have a new episode of Nightcrawlers dropping this weekend. We got all kinds of crazy and fun stuff over on our YouTube channel, from old installments of Fanurism Flicks to episodes of The Talking Geek, as well as older installments of this program. Again, I want to thank everyone who tuned in tonight, and I want to thank, again, Mr. Narwhal, and I hope, man, I haven't heard anything from Goldar yet, so I'm curious to see what he thinks of Black Panther. So until next time, for Fanboys 918, I am the Geek Boy, signing off. Peace.